I like that song. We're going to continue this morning talking about faith and what it was. I'm going to knock that off before the end of the morning. What it was and what it is, and how we deal with it, and how we use faith every day. How many of you all think you've done something that used your faith already today? Anybody? Yeah, half of us. Half of us. I'm worried about the other half. Because when you turned on the shower this morning, or the bathtub, did you really know how that worked and what was going to happen? Floyd does. Floyd's a smart aleck. You know, we wait for that water to come out of there by faith. When we flipped on the light this morning, I don't understand how the juice comes from the box that's up there wired to that thing out in my backyard and comes through my house. And when I hit the switch, son of a gun, I have light. I don't even know why or how my breakfast was ready for me when I came down this morning. But I'm proud that it was. So whether you realize it or not, you've already been faithful. You've used your faith. You turned the ignition key in your car. Hopefully, your faith held you in good stead. Maybe that's where these other folks are, is their faith didn't work, therefore their car did. So, you know, your faith does work. It got you here. I don't know if any of you all are into extreme sports, but over the last 8 or 10 years, there has been just this influx on television and in the sporting world of extreme sports. Sports that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, none of us would have had any concept that the body can flip and twist and turn and make a motorcycle do certain things and make water skis do certain things and make a snowmobile do certain things and come out of it alive, standing up, walking tall, and having a stadium full of people. Come on. Extreme sports is something that is new. And I'm not into watching the X Games, either summer or winter, but I do know what extreme sports are. And I want you to know today that there is now a camera that will allow you, if you are a participant, if Herb decides to go snowmobiling this winter and does things crazy, he can put a camera on the front of the snowmobile so that everybody can see exactly what went on. If Floyd and Carol go skiing in their lake and Floyd learns how to do 4 flips and still land on his feet, there's a camera that will take a picture of it and he can show it to all of us. And we're all going to say, Photoshop. Somebody fix that camera. That's all there is to it, and fix those pictures. But the name of this camera is the HD GoPro Head Hero camera. And it mounts on your helmet like a coal miner's camera. It'll mount on the handlebars of your bicycle or your motorbike or whatever. It'll mount on the windshield or the bumper of your car. It'll mount any other place you want to put it that will capture the adrenaline pumping sport, extreme sport that you're practicing. Well, it's a shame that the writer of the book of Hebrews this morning did not have the HD GoPro Hero camera in the 1st century AD when he was writing about the heroes of the faith 3,000-4,000 years before him. If we had had actual footage of these real heroes that changed the world, that changed our lives, perhaps it would have made it a little bit easier for us to accept, say, the story of Daniel in that lion's den. If I could see on YouTube Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not burning up, but crawling out of there, maybe that would be a little bit easier for me to accept. But see, that's not how God works. Remember, faith is knowing what you can't see. It's having certainty in what cannot be proven. So, in God's infinite wisdom, there were no cameras back then. We have to take it on faith that all of these things happen. And as the writer of Hebrews tried to capture all of the many heroes of faith, he did a wonderful job of it. He really did. But it's in the written word. Now, I want you to close your eyes. That's the entree that Floyd has been waiting for me to say close your eyes in the middle of the service. But don't go to sleep. But I want you to picture in your head, I want you to picture the scenes in high definition, if you can do that, as the writer of Hebrews calls us to remember those examples. Hear the word of the writer of Hebrews. I'm coming out of chapter 11. And most of these are stories you're familiar with. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as if it were dry land. But when the Egyptians attempted to do so, they were drowned. Picture. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she received the spies from the Hebrew people in peace. And then hear what the writer says to make it even more real. But what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak, that's biblical Barak, thank you very much, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, who administered justice, who obtained promises, who shut the mouths of lions and quenched the raging fire, escaped the edge of the sword, won strength out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight, and women who received their dead by resurrection. Others were tortured, refusing to accept release in order to obtain a better resurrection. You want action heroes? You want extreme stuff? Folks, that's extreme. These are action heroes. And the thing is, those action heroes, back in biblical times, were real people living a real faith in a real world. This isn't Dr. Seuss stuff. This isn't Grimm's fairy tale stuff. This is the reality of who they were. And as we translate over time, it's the reality of who I am. It's the reality of who you are. And it's the reality, and I'm not checking on the choir to see if you're awake. I just want to make sure you're there. It's the reality of the world in which we live. Because we live in a world that desperately needs faithful people. Now, the sad thing is, not all of the faithful people in the Bible, Old Testament and New, not all of them tasted victory in this world. And the fact of the matter is, those of us here today in our church and around the world, and that will come after us and that came before us, we may not taste victory in this world today. And many of those people then were crushed by their endeavors, by their trying to be faithful. Listen further to what the writer says. Now, if you get this in HD, it gets pretty grim. It gets pretty gory. Others suffered a mocking and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, persecuted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and in holes in the ground. I've been doing, let me rephrase that, my son has been doing a lot of genealogical work. And he has traced one side of my family back about 6 generations. And part of what I did on my trip up into Canada a couple of weeks ago was right over the line above upstate New York into Canada. I went to a cemetery looking for the grave of my great-great-great-grandfather, whose name was Mitchell Roussel, because I used to be a Roussel. But when my great-grandparents got married in Fort Covington, New York, not only did they sign a piece of paper that said they were husband and wife, they signed a piece of paper that said they were no longer French, Roussel, but they were now anglicized. They were American. They were Russells. So, if you get the urge to call me Roussel sometime, that's all right. I may not recognize it, but I went back looking for those who went before me. Well, the writer of Hebrews today has gone back and he hadn't only looked, he found them, and he's given us a description of them, and we see in them how things were back then. And in his words, and particularly, I go to the one who was sawed in half. In a sense, we see that to be a hero in the faith could lead to horrible results. Pretty extreme, isn't it? That's an extreme lifestyle that these people chose when they said, I'm God's. And later on, when they said, I believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and I accept Him as my Lord and Savior. These were men and women who looked in the face of death and torture, and because of their extreme faith in God, they never flinched. And we know that they were not always victorious in this world, but they were heroes just exactly the same, and they were real-life heroes. Again, I say, not Dr. Seuss, not Grimm's fairy tales, but real-life heroes. Well, folks, if I do my genealogy back far enough, and if you do your genealogy back far enough, guess who we're going to run into in our family tree? These people right here. These people right here. That were so faithful to God that they accepted what went on. And somewhere in our DNA, there's one little gizmo that takes us right back then. By its very nature, faith is somewhat heroic. And as I studied for this lesson today, and for next Sunday when we get to the cloud of witnesses, and for last Sunday with Abraham, I was studying, and Thursday night I turned on the TV, and there were however many thousands of people with their candle in hand walking around Graceland doing their shtick. And I haven't figured out yet what that is, but the newsman said, and here are the faithful that come out every year. And I got a little bit disturbed that we call, and I'm not, please don't hear me that I'm disparaging Elvis or the thousands that went out, but I can't use the term faithful for those people who go to honor a worldly person with the same thought of faith that we think about that the heroes of faith had. And they knew when they got there, as faithful followers of Elvis Presley, They might be there 2.5, 3 hours. They received a special blessing this year because it wasn't 107 degrees while they were out there. But